Edward Scissorhands is a romantic fantasy movie directed by Tim Burton and first released in 1990. While the film is considered by many to be a family-friendly movie, some of its other adaptations should not, under any circumstances, be shown to young children. And trust me, I won't be making that mistake again. Johnny Depp plays Edward, an odd but friendly man who has scissors for hands, hence the name of the film, Edward Scissorhands. I didn't think I'd have to explain this stuff to you guys. Keep up. Edward Scissorhands was critically acclaimed upon release and performed adequately in the box office. However, in the 30 years since the film's initial release, Jesus I'm old, the film's popularity has grown massively, with many people claiming it to be one of their favourite movies of all time. The film is easily one of my top 5 favourite movies, and is hands down my favourite Christmas film of all time. I usually don't even like romantic movies, but this one just always hits me right in the feels. I think it's because Edward Scissorhands is a film with a massive heart and tells a real love story. Not the I would really love to bang that person kind of love story that was far more common at the time. In fact, I don't think Edward even discovers what sex is during the film, which is a shame because I'd imagine he'd be very good at scissoring. Anyways, the film begins when a lady named Peg is going around her neighbourhood trying to sell her beauty products. She isn't having much luck, however, so decides that the creepy as fuck castle near her house is the perfect place to sell all of her goods. Upon entering the castle, however, Peg discovers that no one seems to be living there anymore. That is, until she enters the attic and comes face to face with a strange man who appears to be hideously deformed. She is initially scared for her life, but Edward soon sets her mind at ease once his gentle nature is shown to her. Edward has been living all alone in the castle ever since his master died, and doesn't have a lot of experience interacting with other people. Peg decides to bring Edward home with her. Edward is excited to finally see the outside world, completely oblivious to the fact that this town is full of cunts. Peg shows Edward around her house and shows him pictures of her family. Edward sees a picture of Peg's daughter Kim and instantly thinks to himself, I really want to scissor her. Edward spends the next few days getting used to living around other people. He discovers that having scissors for hands has its benefits and starts providing his services to the townsfolk. A few days later, Kim returns home and finds Edward sleeping in her bed and nearly has a heart attack. We've all been there, am I right, guys? While most of the townspeople seem to be in love with Edward, some to an unhealthy degree, Kim is initially scared and uncomfortable around him. However, from spending time with him, she starts to see what a sweet guy he is and how much he genuinely cares for her. However, there's one problem that keeps them from falling in love. Kim's boyfriend, whose name I cannot for the life of me remember. Give me a second. Boyfriend's name... I don't give a fuck. Anyways, this guy is a real piece of shit. It's pretty much thanks to this guy that the whole town ends up hating Edward. He keeps exploiting Edward's innocence to get him to do stuff that will damage his reputation with the town. Eventually, it gets to the point where the whole town forces Edward to return to his castle to live in isolation. Kim also starts falling in love with Edward and tells boyfriend that she doesn't want to be with him anymore. This infuriates him so much that he hunts down Edward in the castle and starts attacking him. Thankfully, Edward gives him a good scissoring and kills him. I don't think I've ever been so happy to see someone die in a film before. After this act, Kim realizes that the town will never allow the two of them to be together, so she says goodbye to him in one of the most genuinely heartbreaking scenes I've ever seen in a love film.
Goodbye.
Gets me every time. There is also a director's cut version of this scene that is even more beautiful than this one. God, I'd love to scissor you. Finally, the film cuts to a few decades later when Kim is an old lady, and she was actually telling this young girl her story or something. Actually, now that I think about it, the film doesn't start with Peg driving around selling beauty products. It starts with Kim trying to get this little girl to sleep, but I couldn't be arsed changing the script at this point. Anyways, as I said earlier, Edward Scissorhands is easily one of my favourite films ever. It has an important message about beauty being in the eye of the beholder, or some shit. It tells a love story that is so genuine that it's very hard not to get wrapped up in the whole thing. By the end of the film, it becomes very clear that both Kim and Edward have fallen completely in love with each other. And while a lot of people would probably roll their eyes at the idea of a woman as beautiful as Kim falling for an awkward albino man with fucking scissors for hands, the film is so incredibly well made that it feels totally earned by the end. The film is also a commentary on how normal people tend to treat those who are different from them. Edward is hopelessly innocent, and many people take advantage of that fact for their own needs. In a lot of ways, Edward Scissorhands reminds me a lot of Beauty and the Beast, except with no happy ending, which is kinda more realistic when you think about it, because life is shit and no one ever has a happy ending. We all die alone. Anyways, please remember to like and subscribe, and support me on Patreon if you want, even though it doesn't matter because I'm going to die anyways.